My presentation is a little shorter than other people's, so I'm going to just give everyone a sec to kind of get in and get settled, and then we'll get rocking and rolling in a moment. How's your guys' day been so far? Solid? Yeah, a lot of nods. That's good stuff. I like that. Alrighty, let's do this. So first of all, my name is Tyler Langford. I am a sophomore at Creighton University out in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm sure none of you guys have been there, but if any of you have, shout out to you. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. So I'm a Midwest guy through and through, but I've spent some time up here with NYSPHSAA a couple of times. I was up at the state football championships, had a great time. Really grateful to be up here. I appreciate them having me out. So I'm just curious, can I get a show of hands for all the sophomores in the room? Okay, very cool. And then juniors. Wonderful. You guys are probably getting the college process started. And then any seniors? No seniors. All right. We got some youth leadership in the room. I love it. So do any of you plan or hope to play sports in college? Raise your hand. All right, sweet. You're gonna raise your hand a lot in this presentation because it makes my life a little easier. So raise your hand if you've heard of NIL. Perfect. Can you tell me a little bit about what you know about NIL?
So they get sponsored as an interactive, which you couldn't do before.
Yeah, you nailed it. That is the best description we've gotten today. So he pretty much hit on the basic points: name, image, and likeness, NIL. So what does this mean? Athletes previously have not been able to remain or to maintain their amateur status and remain eligible when signing endorsement deals in college. It conflicted with the NCAA's amateurism rules, but the problem is that these schools are making millions of dollars off these athletes, and then the NCAA is making billions of dollars off these athletes, and they function as a nonprofit. So it was kind of just a mess of a system. And then enough lawsuits and cases started to come up that the NCAA changed their mind and passed some NIL legislation in July 1st of 2021. The rules differ by state and school. It's constantly developing. If you go from your high school in NYSPHSAA to a different high school in a different state, you might go from being able to do NIL to not being able to do NIL, or your rules might change entirely. If you transfer from a school in New York to a school in Massachusetts, your rules are going to differ from state to state. So there's a lot to think about. So I'm going to start you guys off with a couple of facts. I'm sure you've seen the big headlines when it comes to NIL, and this kid made $8 million to come here, and this kid made this much money to go to a school. The market's a lot different than that, and those headlines are blown out of proportion. So here's more of an idea of how NIL works as a breakdown. So year one, the industry generated $917 million. I would venture to say that's a lot of dollars. Year two, we are projected as an industry to hit $1.14 billion. That is even more dollars. That is a massive industry. It started in 2021, so the growth has been crazy. And it's only going up from here, right? College athletics has been a huge market for a long time. It's getting tapped into now, and so is the high school market. In year two, we're estimating that on average, each D1 athlete will earn about $3,200 from their NIL activities. As a sophomore in college, I can tell you that that is not an insignificant amount of money. I would personally love a little $3,200 stimulus check. So it's definitely, and that includes all the athletes, of which there are many who really aren't educated on NIL, don't go out and get deals, and don't make money on NIL. So when you think about it, those who actually go out as D1 and below athletes and pursue deals, everybody who pursues it can get one for sure. I like to focus on these types of athletes. You know, you'll get the 1% that's making a ton of money, and that's fantastic. And those starters at those Power 5 schools, like, great, they can make that money. But a lot of it comes down to like these 460 student athletes who partner with local businesses. So I like to tell the story like this. So back in 8th grade, I was a fantastic athlete, and pretty quickly my career petered out in high school. But, you know, let's say I was good enough that, you know, my local hot dog joint down the road, who makes the best Chicago dogs, wanted to sponsor me. I could do a small deal where it's like, if I post, on Twitter and I'm like, hey, Herm's Palace has the best dogs, like make sure you go check them out. I could eat free for a month, or I could get a small amount of money for that. And it builds up as you do tweets and different deals with different businesses. So there's 460 student athletes out there. Just last year, you partnered with local businesses and got free food or, smaller amounts of money, which can still be thousands and thousands of dollars. Partnering with people in their community, whether it be service projects, food organizations, restaurants, like whatever it is. There's people who get free haircuts because they just post their haircut and tag their barber every time. So a lot of things you can do. It's not just people coming and giving you money. I like to talk about this a lot because when I started with Eccker Sports, it was my company, there were 7 states, I think, where high schoolers could make NIL money. And it started with Louisiana. There's 27 now, about 13, 14 months later. And the way the South works, obviously football is kind of their life, and Texas is yellow now. I bet Texas goes green really soon. When Texas goes green, everybody's going to follow. So New York did you guys a big favor by giving you guys a lot of time to transition into this NIL era, learn about NIL, learn about how to manage your brand, and learn about how to, carry yourself and gain those skills and maybe make some money along the way. So as you can see, a majority of the states have now allowed it, and I expect that to continue. So let's talk specifically about New York. So like I mentioned, NYSPHSAA has done a wonderful job. They've got a great set of guidelines, very helpful to you guys. They outline rules that will keep you safe and make sure that you can maintain your eligibility. Keep playing the sports you love. As you can see, high school NIL is permitted. There's a few rules you want to be aware of. Number one, you can't wear uniforms or school marks during an NIL activity. So you can't rep, whatever your high school is when you're signing a deal and posting it on social media, just because then that associates your school with the deal. Your school doesn't necessarily want to just be implicitly associated with everything you do. So for that reason, you also can't use school facilities in your promotions. You can't, flick up at the 50-yard line of your football stadium and post a Chick-fil-A ad, right? It's not allowed. You also cannot sign professional playing contracts. You cannot do NIL during team activities. And this is not on there, but make sure you think of it or you write this down. What was I going to say? You are not allowed to enter contracts that conflict with already existing school contracts. So let's say you guys are sponsored by Adidas, or you guys already have like a billboard even on your scoreboard that's sponsored by a restaurant, and maybe you want to partner with a competitor. That could cause problems, right? Your school already has a deal that's existing. So you have to run every deal by your coach, your counselor, your AD, right? Get it through that school support system, because the last thing you want to do is accidentally violate a rule that you didn't know you were violating. And all of a sudden your junior or senior year is just gone. So raise your hand if you have social media in here. Okay, wonderful. I also do. And if from this point on, you guys wouldn't mind if you just jot down maybe one question you have from each slide, and we'll go over some questions at the end. But one thing I really want to drive home is the relationship between social media and NIL. We're all on socials. I heard you guys talking about winning the social media competition. Like, sounds like it's a big deal. Got to get that merch. I love it. I appreciate it. And social media is big in the NIL world, right? When you think about people who make sponsorship deals, a lot of it is influencers, right? I don't love the word influencer, but like that's what the market is. It's people on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, these different social media websites who understand how to market themselves. They understand what brands want in a partner, and they understand how to use their image to A, get brands more interactions, and B, get themselves deals. So 80% of sports related name, image, and likeness deals are social media related. Beyond that, when you break NIL deal types down into specific categories, content creation, influencing, and brand promotion, which is social media related, is 72%. And the other 10% is endorsement deals, right? Which is right in hand with this. If you manage your social media well, you'll get endorsement deals, and then you can do endorsement deals on socials, in person, whenever, as long as you're following the guidelines. So I want to talk about brand management, right? Social media is big. If you want to get partnerships with companies, you have to be someone that companies want to partner with. So any Nets fans in the room? You remember Kyrie? A few months ago, everybody knows what Kyrie was doing. Kyrie posted a film on his story that was anti-Semitic, and he lost a ton of sponsorship deals. He lost, I don't remember the exact number, but millions of dollars worth of deals. Personally, I would value millions of dollars over, promoting something on social media that would be controversial. But then you've got good brand management. So has anyone heard of Anthony Leal by chance? Probably not. So he's an Indiana basketball player. I don't think he plays more than a couple minutes a game. Was not a highly touted recruit, but being a D1 athlete, he's got NIL opportunities. So let's talk about how he manages his brand, because every single major news outlet carried the Kyrie Irving news. Everybody heard about it. So here's a lesser known.
Of goodness that brightens the world. You radiate kindness and bring happiness to so many people, especially me. So nice.
You can read that out loud.
Hey sis, I wanted to let you know how much I look up to you and admire who you are. Your soul is beautiful and you are the best role model ever. There is no doubt that I have made it to where I am today because of you. Someone like you deserves no burdens or restrictions in life. And I feel like the best way to help you with that is by I don't even know how much that is.
I do. It's zero now.
Like actually?
Finish reading.
I feel like the best way to help with that is by paying off your student loan debt.
So that dude
I
doesn't
knew
play at all. And he's not a name that you guys would know. And he was able to do enough with his NIL. I don't know if you guys know how much student loan debt is. He paid off like $400,000 worth of debt for his sister. And that is unbelievable. So we've got two examples here. We've got brand management where you are going to lose a lot of money. You're going to lose fans. You're going to lose people who admire you. You're a role model for people and you're posting stuff that's pretty detrimental to others and to yourself. And then you've got Anthony Leal, who understands that NIL can be used for good. So he did that, just being nice to his sister, right? Raised money, got that forgiven. I guarantee you that since that video came out, he has gotten a ton more NIL deals, because the headlines across every major news site for Kyrie Irving for 2 months was that Anthony Leal maybe never would have had his name out there beyond just playing a few minutes for Indiana fans, but every news outlet in the country carried that. So now he is someone who's a known entity in the NIL world. He's got experience. He's made good money on it, and he's used it for good. And he's someone that's clearly desirable for companies to sponsor, because who wouldn't want to partner with a kid who just paid off $400,000 of student loan debt for his sister? I mean, that's unbelievable. If I had $400,000, I don't know that student loan debt would be my first move. So respect to him. One thing people often ask is, how do I make money doing NIL? And there's a lot of different ways to do it, but someone asked a really good question in a previous session. They were like, well, do most athletes have brands reach out to them? Because that's what you see in the news. And the answer is no. The way that a lot of deals get done are through these marketplaces. So are any of you guys familiar with like StockX or eBay or any of that stuff? Yeah. So those are online marketplaces, right? You can post something that you want to sell, and then you can buy something that you want to buy. It's pretty simple. It's the same with NIL marketplaces, but with a little twist. So athletes will set up a profile talking about who they are, what they're about, bio. It's basically, it's an open doors version of a social media profile. And then a company will put together a profile. So let's say I'm with Eccker Sports and we have a company profile and I'm looking for athletes to reach out to. I'd go on an NIL marketplace and I'd start looking for people who fit the description of what I wanted. And I'd either offer them a deal, or a lot of times companies will just put a deal out there and athletes can go apply for it. And that's where you make the money, is when you're scrolling through and you find a $100 deal for a tweet that maybe someone hasn't jumped on yet, and you have leveraged your social media well, there's $100 in your pocket. And then you can tell the next company, like, here's what I've done. So it really compounds on itself. So it's very simple. You create a profile, you look for deals that match your needs, you apply to them. You do not be afraid to put yourself out there. Do not be afraid to email people and maybe embarrass yourself a little bit. Like, this matters. It's a good life skill to be able to advocate for yourself. Reach out through the marketplace and they'll help you complete the deal. They will help you with compliance. They will help you with they will send you a 1099 for taxes at the end of the year. So definitely would recommend it. There's another one called Mogul. I believe it's Mogul, MOGL, that Dwayne Wade just started, that's partnering with some D3 and NAIA schools. So any athlete at any time can use something like this. And I would highly recommend it for anybody looking to get involved. If you spend 20 minutes a day for 7 days applying for NIL deals, I guarantee you will get one. Now let's talk about what you guys all are here to talk about and you're all excited about: taxes. So I don't know if anyone, raise your hand if you've had to file taxes or if you've gotten a 1099. Can you tell me a little bit about what that was like, what the 1099 is maybe? Okay.
I just went to the federal lady or whatever,
we just took it to her or whatever, and this year it's because some economic plan or whatever switched. So usually you get like $50, $100, whatever, back, and this year I haven't got 19.
In returns?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So you got your 1099, right? Saying how much you owed probably.
Yeah.
Right. So what you're gonna do is when you do NIL deals, you're gonna get a 1099 form at the end of the year. And it's basically gonna tell you what you owe, how much you've made. And then one thing you really want to make sure of when you're going through the tax process is you're an independent contractor. So this is something that I've had to deal with myself. So I'm speaking from experience. So I grew up caddying. That's an all cash business, you know, working with golfers. So I never really had to deal with taxes before. And then I got this job in January of last year. So I had my like welcome to the real world moment probably like a month ago when I got my 1099. I was like, okay, so I owe the government a fair amount of money. Because when you are an independent contractor, you don't have anyone to withhold money for taxes for you. So like what you said, where, you know, you're employed, right? So your company is going to withhold those taxes and then you're good to go. When you're self-employed, you're an independent contractor, you don't have that. So you have to pay an independent contractor tax, or self-employment tax is what it's called. And you want to be aware of that when you're going through the process. So one advantage of being an independent contractor is you can write things off that are related to business expenses. So I always tell people that if you're doing NIL and if you're an athlete, you are your own brand, right? Your social media is your business. You are your own business. You're marketing yourself to coaches, other athletes, anyone that interacts with you in any sort of environment. You are constantly marketing your business, right? So let's say that 20% of the phone usage that you have goes to applying to deals, and 30% of the time that you spend on your computer goes to trying to get deals. You can write off, I think, like 30% of the cost of your computer, or like 20% of the cost of your phone. So I would definitely do some research on write-offs, and obviously you want to make sure it's legal and you're doing it ethically and morally, but there's plenty of ways that you can, you know, mitigate your tax responsibilities. My general rule, just what I try to do, what my CEO and accountant for our company told me to do, was save about 30% of your income. Worst case scenario, all 30% of that is gone, but you're already planning for that. Best case scenario, you can kind of treat it like a tax return. Maybe I get to deduct enough that I'm only paying 15%. And then all of a sudden I have another 15% of my total income from that year available. So if you plan ahead and if you're intelligent about it, and if you know the process, you can have a lot of success, and this will not be a huge problem for you. So make sure to do your research. Go to the IRS website, talk to family members and friends who might be experts. Go to Eccker Sports, us, and maybe reach out if you need a little bit of help or a little bit of advice. We have a ton of resources, whether it's lawyers or accountants or any data that you could possibly want. And then I want to talk about collectives. So raise your hand if you've heard of a collective at all. No? All right, no worries. So let's say that I went to Syracuse and I am very wealthy and I'm a huge Syracuse football fan, and I want to see the program really, you know, start taking over. I want to see them rise to the top of the ACC. I would call up my rich alumni booster friends and I'd say, hey guys, you know, let's form an LLC, a limited liability corp. And we'd go ahead and we do that. And then we would raise money from ourselves, our friends, the community, whoever, and we would pool all this money into this collection, right, within the collective. And then that money gets doled out to athletes within that program. So one good example is I have a really good friend from high school who's a walk-on cornerback at Notre Dame, and he'll probably play just a couple snaps his entire career. He's a great guy. He does day in the life of an athlete TikToks, which he was telling me like how embarrassed he was to start it, and then how he's really learned like when you put yourself out there like that and you can use social media and TikTok and whatnot to improve your brand. He's made good money on it. Well, he gets paid by Notre Dame's collective called the Irish Players Club. Him and all his teammates will go make an appearance at a bookstore, make a few $100s. They'll all tweet something, make a few $100s. They all have NFTs made of them that people can go buy to support their athletes. A few $100 coming in left and right. And when you've got all of that, it adds up, right? Like a couple hundred starts to become a couple thousand when you are able to really put yourself out there and start aggregating all these deals. But I will say though, the collectives are third parties, like they are not officially associated with the university, because that would be pay for play and illegal inducements, which we're going to talk about now. So who's heard the term pay for play? I would assume a couple of you at least. You want to tell me a little bit about what it is?
Like students are allowed to get money like just for being there, and you also get like gifts for like the group and stuff like that.
Yeah, you nailed it. So that's exactly what it is. So you cannot be paid for your performance on the field. So if I sign a contract that says for every rushing yard I get this much money, not okay. If I sign a contract that says you get this much, but maybe if you go win the Heisman, you get a little bit extra, not allowed. And then the other part of that is kind of what you mentioned with recruiting, right? With enrollment, you cannot be paid based on your status as a student at that school. So let's say I offer you a deal and that deal stipulates that you have to go to Syracuse. That's not allowed because that is obviously illegal recruiting, which we're about to get into. And that would be third-party recruiting. I'm that same booster, but I haven't done my research and I haven't connected with Eccker Sports. So I don't know what a collective is. I don't know to set it up. I haven't, come to the NYSPHSAA leadership conference and listen to me speak. So I'm trying to figure it out. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna recruit on behalf of Coach Dino. So I'm gonna go ahead and meet with a couple potential football players, just tell them what I like about Syracuse, maybe offer them a little bit of money. And then when that gets found out, maybe I, the booster, get in a little bit of trouble. But the athletes that I met with, they might lose years of eligibility because of their lack of awareness on the third-party recruiting law. So unless it is a coach or someone who is specifically involved with that school's athletic department and are employed by them, don't talk to me. I don't care if a booster calls you and offers you $10 million to pick up the phone, do not pick up the phone. Like you can't play sports and they'll take the money away, and you got to just be really intelligent throughout this process. So if anything seems fishy, talk to your coach, talk to your parents, talk to your ADs, because you'd rather be careful and play than not be careful and not play. So I want to talk just a tiny bit about legal terms and contracts. So the first term is term. This is the length of the contract. So the way that I like to frame this is I'm a sophomore in college. And so I'm going to be at Creighton through May of 2025. So if I'm going to sign a deal, I am not going to sign an NIL deal that runs past May of 2025, because that is when I graduate. I don't know if I'm going to stay. I'm not going to stay in Omaha. I'll tell you that. I love it. It's just a college town for me. So I'd probably move to a different state. Well, there's different laws governing this in different states. So my deal might change. My deal might not be valid. There might be different responsibilities. Like everything changes once you move beyond your period of enrollment. So you want to make sure that you're not signing a deal that takes you past graduation. Now, especially in high school, because if you guys sign a deal in New York and then you go anywhere but New York in college, the laws will be different. And that could absolutely affect your eligibility, your contract, a lot of things. So that's something to be aware of. You also want to think about obligations. You want to make sure they're doable for both sides. If someone's proposing a contract and you don't think you can complete your obligations, like don't take that contract. It's that simple, because you have to fulfill what you have to do to get paid. And if one side isn't able to complete that, then that contract isn't going to work. This was a new one for me, indemnity, but this is an important one. So when both parties indemnify a contract, they basically assure each other that if things go haywire and someone breaches the contract, they're still going to pay. So, let's say that I offer someone $500 and we both indemnify the contract, and then they do what I ask them to do, but I don't pay them. I'm required, because of that mutual indemnification, to pay them. So I can't really get out of it. And then finally, I'd love it if you guys just had an attorney or someone who actually has contract experience look over the contracts. You can do as much research as you want, and that's wonderful. But at the end of the day, before I sign my contract with this company for, next year, I'm going to probably run it over to my parents and have them, take a look at it and just make sure everything's good. Because, a fresh set of eyes never hurt, and a more experienced set of eyes definitely never hurt. And then also check with compliance. So if you're doing a deal in college, check with your compliance office. They will tell you if you can or can't do it. If you're doing a deal in high school, check with your coach and AD. They would be able to tell you what you can and cannot do. Or we're partnered with the state, so they would reach out to us and we would tell them what they can and can't do. So one slide I like to integrate is this. This is a quote from Eddie Bonine. He is the executive director in Louisiana, who was the first state to legalize high school NIL. And I talked about how New York did you guys a favor by doing this so early. And I think that what he said in terms of how it's going to impact most students' journeys in some way is really important, because NIL is, yes, athletes can get paid, but it's more about like the education and the soft skills aspect that kids get, right? You learn how to set up a profile. You learn how to represent yourself on social media, how to market yourself, like what your forward-facing image should be. That's all really important, because it's the same when you're getting a job when you're older, right? If your social media is something a company doesn't want to be associated with, you won't get hired. It's the same in NIL. You learn how to advocate for yourself. You learn all these skills that will benefit you in college and beyond. And if you really embrace it, it's something that can be, really, really life-changing, and it could really improve, some skills that'll serve you better later. So in terms of what we do, we help athletes maximize their opportunities. We help coaches and ADs manage, their programs and whatnot. We have a ton of information, courses, databases, 60 total years of experience, most of which doesn't come from me, if you couldn't guess, but I got about a year under my belt now. So yeah, it's been good stuff. And then this is my information, but yeah, I appreciate you guys. So I'd love to jump into questions. I like to leave a lot of time for that.
So you don't have to be in college to do like all the NIL stuff. You could be in high school to do it. Is there like a minimum age requirement?
I think if you're going to sign a contract and you're a minor, your parents have to approve the contract. And you must be in like high school under the NYSPHSAA's supervision if you're going to sign a deal, I believe. But yeah, you can do it in high school. It also depends on your state though. So like, for example, if you are in Texas right now, you cannot do it in high school.
But in New York, we can.
Correct. So you guys are good. And again, that's just a credit to NYSPHSAA for getting out ahead of it and doing a good job.
Can you do it in college, no matter what state you go to college in?
Yes, unless you go to a service academy. Service academies don't allow, at least last time I checked, which was like last June, that you weren't allowed to do NIL at service academies, but I haven't found another school that bans it. So yes, every other school, NAIA has a different set of laws governing NIL than the NCAA ones do, but they're similar enough that, yeah, everybody can.
I like social media friends to make contacts with some friends and things that you have in this.
That's a really good question. And that's something I didn't touch on that I should have is people think that you have to have a massive follower base to do NIL and to get involved in NIL, and that's not the case. I'm our media director, so I do a lot of interviews with athletes, and I have one series called the Eccker 10 where I specifically interview athletes who don't have a lot of followers, but who do a ton of NIL deals. And I've interviewed multiple athletes who have like combined like 3,000 followers, 4,000 followers, and they've done 15 to 20 NIL deals because they might have, you could have 500 followers, but if 60% of that 500 follows what you do actively, and you can go to a company and say, this is what I'm interested in. I will represent you guys well. I have a 60% engagement rate and people care about what I post. After you reach out to enough companies, someone will want to pay you for that. So it does not matter how many followers you have. I mean, that just comes, Yeah.
Okay, so this is kind of really dumb question.
Okay.
Okay, so say like it's like a lacrosse team.
Yeah.
And like if the team is sponsored by like Nike
Mhm.
and but everything like to their like uniform,
Right.
helmets, like everything is
They're
like,
straight Nike.
except for their sticks. And then like a player wants to do an NIL deal with like a type of stick company, can they still do that, or is that clashing with Nike?
So in this situation, and you would want to make sure with the compliance officer, but I would say that if the deal with Nike does not include sticks and you're not partnered with a different company for sticks, then you should be okay. But you do want to make sure you're talking to compliance coaches, whoever runs that at your school. If your school already has a deal in place for sticks, no. But if they don't, I would guess that you're good. You just can't. Although I guess you can't do NIL deals during team activities either. So I would talk to your coach about that. My guess is that it would be a little bit complicated to get done. But that's a good question. Yeah.
So say that you're working with a certain brand and you have a contract set in place, say until like, if I had a contract right now until the end of June, and they wanted to like stop it. Like, if they were like, oh, like, we're done, we don't want you on our contract anymore, like, would that result in like, could I take like legal action against that, or am I just have to kind of be like, okay, I'm like my own boss?
It depends. If they violate the contract by voiding it and there's no cause, then you'd probably be able to, see what you can do. But if you do something to violate the contract, if they have any cause to get rid of it, for example, if you posted something on socials that they didn't like, then they could end it.
Yeah.
So yes, basically just don't give them a reason to, to end it.
You hold more than one NIL deal at a time?
Yes. Yes, but you also want to make sure that you aren't trying to facilitate deals with people that are directly in competition. Because I mean, obviously you can't do Nike and Adidas, so it could even be like if you're doing a Barstool deal, maybe they don't want you partnered with a different apparel company. So it's a company by company basis and you want to ask when you're going through the process. But yeah, absolutely. Most athletes who do NIL at a pretty high level, they all have like plenty of deals. Like I have one girl right now I've talked to who's got 15 running right now. So yeah, and some of them are one-off, some of them are more extended. So it varies based on the deal.
Okay, so when you say NIL deal and it's like not only apparel, like what are like examples of?
Yeah. So an example would be if I got paid to post on Twitter. So like I said, like if I have that, my hot dog joint down the street and they call me up and they're like, hey, we'll give you, free food for a month, or we'll give you $100 if you tweet about us. That's about 80% of the deals are social media. Endorsement makes up 10, and then you've got probably 5 or 6 that make up the other 18%. So yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I would I'd go to, yeah, I'd do Open Doors would be the one that I would go to. This is there are a ton. There's 45 marketplaces out there. This one is one of the better ones. We are partnered as a company with one called NIL Village, which I really like. It's crowdfunded, and a lot of people who do, service-based things will go through NIL Village. You basically go on and you put, what your mission is and what you're about on the website. And, I've got a friend who's trying to start a music career and he's raising money on there for that. And I have another friend who's raised like $5,000 for mental health awareness on this website just through crowdfunding. And so if you do your research, I'm telling you, like, you can make money. You just got to be willing to reach out to people and take no for an answer. Yeah.
You can't do it during a team. Like if I do summer ball, I still use like NIL deals. Like one of the companies where I live is an electrical manufacturing company. They're like linemen, and they make different parts for telephone poles. They have a specific jersey that I would wear if they were in summer ball. Would that still be in violation of the?
Is summer ball related to your school in any way?
No, it's a completely separate thing. It's like all in the area. It's all different states.
Probably. I'd say probably. I'd check and make sure. Robert, he's asking if he plays club ball not associated with his school or NYSPH or NYSPHAA. Yeah, it takes me a second. He can wear something during a team activity as long as it's not associated with this.
So yeah, so the way that it was already explained is our NIL or amateur rule states that you can't have any affiliation with your school whatsoever. So when you sign that contract, in the contract terminology, you can't say that you're required to wear it while participating in for your high school team. So if you're playing summer ball, then the contract should just read, and I'm not an attorney, nor do I want to be, but that's where, as you've already heard, if you are entering into an NIL deal, it's really important to make sure you're getting your parents to consult with an attorney, especially if there's a substantial amount of money, because you don't want to violate the contract, but you also don't want to violate your eligibility at the high school level. Thankfully, we've been doing NIL. We were the first state in the country to allow students to monetize off of who you are, unaffiliated to your school. But if you're playing summer ball and you have somebody that wants to give you a bat, or I think I just heard a question about a lacrosse stick, and it's all not affiliated to the school whatsoever, you're completely fine. So the best way to look at it is, as long as there's no link or no association to the school, you can do whatever you want. As soon as there's a link or an association to the school, now you're going to be in violation of our amateur.
So that's where your lacrosse stick example, if it was for a club, you'd be fine. But since you're wearing team marks, that's why I was a little, and then, so yeah, obviously for club. I'll go to you first.
If you're like trying to get a deal and like to do it as an ad, but it's added, like if I'm playing for a high school and then I'm filming something at a college, would that be a violation?
If you filmed a video at a different university,
Yeah, but I don't play that.
would it have like their mark? You would have to get approval from them. Because it's the same concept in terms of, if you're doing something at that school is still, associated with that. So you would have to reach out and ask them, especially if it's a college. But yeah, it depends. And so, I mean, if there's someone like, in an athletic department, for example, and you're like, hey, I got this deal, would you guys be okay with this? There's a chance. So maybe, but the school marks thing is also a big deal in college too. So it probably not, but I generally would avoid any like school grounds or school marks if I'm doing a deal. Just because, you know, you want it to be associated with you and like just you, like he said, you don't want any links to any outside organizations, because that's when it gets a little murky. So you could ask, but, and then you had a question?
Yeah, so I just said that in New York State, the reason that we're able to do this is because of NYSPHAA and the way that they set it up for us. How are we protected by NYSPHAA with no connection to our schools in terms of public high school?
What do you mean by protected?
Well, like we aren't allowed, I believe you said that it's set up by NYSPHAA, so we aren't allowed to do it if it's not associated with that, or I misunderstood.
Or I meant that just like NYSPHAA had passed it for New York, so now athletes like within NYSPHAA can profit from NIL.
So it used to be.
It used to be that high schools couldn't, and then like at all, anywhere, and then NYSPHAA were on the scene and we're just like I talked about in terms of all the soft skills and everything you can learn. They were like, if you're associated with us, you can do it, but you can't do this, this, and this. So yeah, so they trailblazers did a good job. Yeah.
Like, if I get a deal with my high school, not with I'm at high school and I'm going to college in a different state.
Yeah.
It doesn't allow it. Would that interfere with, if I stop it before I go to that college, would that like interfere at all?
Would the school doesn't allow NIL? Would it be a service academy?
Oh, this is just hypothetical.
Oh, well, so the only schools I know of that do not allow NIL at all are service academies. There's a couple schools that I've heard that are kind of anti, but
What's the chart with all the states on it? Was that for high school?
that was for high school.
Oh,
The answer though is, again, like you want to make sure that if you're doing an NIL deal, it's within your period of enrollment. So if you're going to do one while you're in high school, just do it while you're in high school. And then like if they want to sponsor you when you're in college, move into college and then have that conversation, because you're going to function under your school's laws and that state's laws and not NYSPHSAA's and the New York laws. So you want to make sure that you don't, I would just say, don't have anything running if you're switching states, because that's when it's just, I don't even know all the information on that. So, yeah.
So in college, you're like, and I don't have uniforms and stuff, or.
Generally, no, it depends on the university, but in general, you're just not gonna have school marks in an ad. I've seen some where they'll get approval, but it really just varies. So, you know, you can always ask compliance is what I would say, is that is like your best resource. In college is compliance, and in high school, it's your coaches, it's us, because we're partnered with NYSPHSAA. So yes, yeah. You guys have a lot of good questions. I appreciate it. I shortened this to try and have a few minutes for questions. So you guys are doing great. Anybody got anything else?
You need
Yeah.
to be a member of Eccker.
To do NIL? No. I mean, you can, we do, for $25, we're doing, which is like $2 a month, basically, we're doing a membership with us, which is just access to a ton of data and information and assistance. Like if you guys are going on a visit, for example, and you don't know what you can and can't do on that visit, we'll give you a checklist of things to do and not to do, and, you know, things to ask coaches about and to be concerned about. And we'll give you tax tips, and we'll tell you what the law in that state is. We'll tell you what your school's policy is, and we can really, you know, guide you to a place that you can help. So I'd recommend taking those and just talking to your parents. You know, a $25 investment to go make a few hundred is pretty good. So you don't have to be a member, but we help for sure. And we work with your state association, so we're right here anyway. Anybody else? Cool.
So we have a few more minutes. As I was introduced this morning, I'm the director of the High School Athletic Association. So I get the unique opportunity to work on a lot of different aspects of the association. So we have 800 high schools, about 600,000 student athletes.